Let's jump right into this explainer, because today we're looking at a framework that is honestly pretty radical. It's an ancient blueprint, but it directly tackles the absolute pressure cooker that so many young men and women are living in right now. You know, if you really look at the historical teachings of Jesus, it's not at all what you might expect. We aren't talking about a list of rigid rules here. Instead, the source material lays out this profound, countercultural roadmap for navigating our modern everyday anxieties. So let's break down exactly how this ancient wisdom actually works today.
Okay, to start, we really need to ask ourselves a hard, kind of uncomfortable question. Are our current metrics for the good life actually working? Because, just look around. Between the relentless hustle culture, the hyper-competition, and the constant burnout we're seeing, especially for young adults, you've kind of got to wonder. It really feels like the modern blueprint we've all been handed might just be totally broken. Is this actually what success is supposed to look like?
Well, to truly understand this ancient wisdom, we first have to recognize the very real, very modern problems it speaks to. That brings us to Section 1, the flawed modern blueprint, a generation under pressure.
Let's be real, young professionals and students today are dealing with a perfect storm of anxieties. It's intense. On one hand, you've got this crushing weight tied to career success and economic productivity. Add to that skyrocketing mental health struggles and, oh yeah, the exhausting 24/7 demand to curate this flawless, shiny identity on social media. It's wild when you think about it. We are literally more connected than any generation in history, yet we're facing an absolute epidemic of loneliness. So this is the baseline. This is the reality we're working from.
So how exactly does an ancient text respond to that kind of modern pressure? Let's get into Section 2, defining true human flourishing beyond rules and institutions.
Now, what is super interesting here is how the source material actually frames its core message. A lot of people just assume the historical teachings of Jesus were all about rigid institutionalism or, mindless rule following. But actually, scratch that. The text points to something entirely different. The whole focus is on human flourishing, and it roots this in two ancient concepts. First, you have the Greek idea of eudaimonia, which basically translates to a life of deep, profound fulfillment and purpose. And then there's the Hebrew tradition of shalom, meaning wholeness, peace, and right relationships. It's not about a checklist of what you aren't allowed to do. It's about what you actually need to become whole.
Okay, let's see how this translates into some real actionable wisdom for today. Moving on to Section 3, identity beyond your performance, escaping the resume trap.
This comparison right here perfectly captures how this ancient framework just flips the modern narrative completely upside down. On one side, we have our current blueprint. As young men and women, we're navigating this hyper-competitive space where your worth is constantly measured by your resume, your economic output, or your latest curated post. It's exhausting, right? But then, look at the countercultural wisdom on the other side. Jesus taught that human value is intrinsic. It's rooted simply in being loved by God, rather than being this moving target you have to constantly earn. Historically, he backed this up by defending and elevating the very people society marginalized. It's basically saying that true flourishing kicks in the exact moment we stop endlessly trying to prove our worth to a hypercritical world.
And that brings us to a really crucial point that tackles one of the most painful realities of our time. Here is Section 4, the power of radical community, the cure for isolation. Like we talked about earlier, loneliness is a massive epidemic right now for young adults. Well, the core premise in the source material is that true flourishing literally cannot happen in isolation. You need people. But to counter that isolation, look at the intentional community Jesus actually built. We're talking tax collectors, political zealots, fishermen, and female financial patrons. Think about that mix for a second. These are people from completely clashing, historically hostile backgrounds. He wasn't out there building a comfortable little echo chamber. He built a highly diverse, incredibly radical community.
Building on that, the contrast here is pretty stark. Our modern epidemic leaves us isolated and alone. So what's the countercultural fix? It's vulnerable, self-sacrificial relationships. This model emphasizes that to have authentic community, we actually have to look outside ourselves and serve others. By prioritizing self-sacrifice over pure self-interest, this ancient wisdom acts as the ultimate active antidote to the isolation that is frankly plaguing so many young professionals today.
Which leads us seamlessly right into his most famous teaching, one that totally reevaluates what winning even means. Let's look at Section 5, the upside-down kingdom, redefining success.
In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus totally flips the script on the definition of a successful life. Think about our typical modern metric, right? This generation is constantly pushed to accumulate wealth, chase status, and secure individual power. But this upside-down kingdom narrative, It argues that true blessing and fulfillment actually belong to completely different types of people. We're talking about the humble, the merciful, the peacemakers, and those hungering for justice. Under this ancient standard, human flourishing isn't about the size of your bank account or your job title. It's measured by how much love, mercy, and healing you bring to the people around you. Kind of a game changer when you really stop and think about it.
Now, understanding all this historical context is fascinating, for sure, but it begs a pretty important question. How do we actually structure conversations around this blueprint today? Let's dive into Section 6, Real-World Application and Doubts, Navigating Conversations Today. The vibe and atmosphere of these conversations matter just as much as the content itself. Young men and women want authentic dialogue. Nobody wants to be talked at with a monologue. So the source data highlights 3 specific steps for creating these environments. Number 1, lead with hard questions. Jesus didn't just bark commands, he used questions to get people thinking deeper. So we definitely shouldn't shy away from heavy topics like religious hypocrisy, suffering, or sexuality. Number 2, normalize doubts. Curiosity and skepticism are not failures. We need to frame them as necessary stepping stones for building a mature, authentic worldview. And number 3, always focus on real-world application. We have to bridge that ancient past right into our modern reality. And that brings us right to our final takeaway. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this exact, incredibly powerful question drawn straight from the source material. Just read this closely for a second. How does this teaching change the way we treat our coworkers, handle our anxieties, or view our bank accounts tomorrow morning? You know, it's one thing to just intellectually learn about a concept of flourishing. It's a whole different ballgame to actually go out and live it. So as you finish up with this explainer and get ready to face whatever modern pressures tomorrow throws at you, I really encourage you to chew on that question. Is the current blueprint really working for you? Or is it finally time to try something radically different?